Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to The Common Law. I'm your host this evening, Attorney Ed Berkman. A couple updates on my end. As you know, I am a Massachusetts attorney. However, I have been approved to be a New Hampshire attorney. I get sworn in at the end of March, and now I will be dual barred, so I will be able to represent clients in both Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Now, although I am an attorney, I am not your attorney. So anything you hear me speak about today, or anything you hear my guest speak about today, please do not consider any of this legal advice. Even if you feel as if this is exactly your legal situation, I promise you it is not. The devil is always in the details when it comes to these things. So please seek out the advice and talk to an actual attorney, or, and my email is on the screen right down here below. You're more than welcome to email me, and I can answer your question the best I can. It is a great privilege this evening. I have paralegal Robin Reale. She is a paralegal at the law firm of DeRogers and Tierney, which was the law firm I formerly worked at. Robin, thank you for coming on The Common Law.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, how long have you been a paralegal for?
So I've been working as a paralegal for, I started in high school working in law firms as basically a file clerk, legal assistant, type like that. And then in college, I was a legal assistant, legal secretary, worked through paralegal. So I've been in the legal field for my entire career since high school. So paralegal specifically for the past, say, 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what attracted you to that role?
Well, I was working in Boston for most all of my career. And the firm that I worked in Boston was winding down. The partners were retiring. Some of them branched off. Ones that I didn't work for branched off to another smaller firm. So I knew my time there was going to be over. But we knew quite a bit ahead of time. We knew a year or two ahead of time.
So what interested you in getting into the legal profession?
I think I sort of just fell into it. In high school, I wanted to work. I got my working papers when I was 14. And my sister actually worked at a law firm. So she said, they could use some help around here. So I got working papers, and that's what I did. And I sort of just fell into it, and I liked it. I like to help people.
Yeah.
So
and
that's what I did.
DeRogers and Tierney is a firm that mainly focuses on estate planning and estate administration, which would be going through like the probate process, right?
Yeah. So DeRogers and Tierney does estate planning, drafting estate planning documents, elder care documents, probate, trust administration, estate tax returns, tax compliance work. I mainly work in estate administration and trust administration, and I do the estate tax returns.
So when you say estate administration, what is that really?
So estate administration is the probate process when someone passes away, either with a will or without a will. You have to open a probate with the probate court, and it all depends. It varies from depending on your assets, what they might be, how complicated the probate process might be, and like I said, whether you have a will or not. Some people think, well, if I have a will, that avoids probate. That's not the case. So it all depends on the plan you have in place, if at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned going to the probate court.
Yep.
You're not an attorney, you're a paralegal.
Right. Correct.
So you don't need to be an attorney to file these documents and to open up a probate?
You need to, well, no, you don't. People could do them on their own. I don't recommend it. I always recommend getting an attorney. So every probate is different. Every probate court is different, even though it's supposed to be uniform. And that's what I've learned so I would recommend always going to a law firm and getting advice. I wouldn't recommend doing it on your own.
But it is possible.
It is possible.
Yeah.
It is. But
Yeah.
I guess a lot of aspects of the law, anything is possible to do on your own, but do you want to? Like you said,
Gotcha.
Devil's in the details, right? Yeah.
Great. So when you started off, how long did it take you to kind of become an expert in the field and like really kind of how long did you work before you kind of really got comfortable with sort of the probate process?
Well, I don't know what, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, but so most of my career I worked in civil litigation, some employment law. So I never did anything related to probate or estate planning. When I left Boston, I had the opportunity to, my daughter was small, and I had the opportunity to work for a small firm in Beverly, not DeRoches and Tierney, but another firm. And it was doing estate planning, probate administration. I had never done it, but it was kind of with a startup, so I had the opportunity to do that. And that's where I learned quite a bit of what I know. So I guess there, because I worked for a solo practitioner, and when you work for a solo practitioner, it's more hands-on. You're right in the nitty-gritty. You're, as opposed to a big law firm in Boston where you're getting a little piece of this and that. You're really, when you work for a solo, you're able to do a lot more. And I really dove into it, and I think got most of my knowledge there.
Yeah, you have to wear a lot of hats usually in the
Oh
solo
yeah,
office,
yeah, you're
so.
doing everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And you just do probates in Massachusetts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you ever dealt with any probates out, or any sort of probates out in, like, in New Hampshire?
I've assisted with a probate in New Hampshire for a client that had to finalize one, but again, we couldn't do it. She did it on her own with a little assistance, but she had to be the one to sign off on that.
Any interesting probates that you've handled that?
Oh, I've
No
done.
details, no names.
Yeah, no details, no names, but like you said, wearing all hats. I have done everything from the attorney I used to work for was a public administrator in Suffolk County, so he would get assigned cases that say, no heirs were opening up a case, but Mass Health had a huge lien, and so they have a public administrator appointed and to sell property so that they get paid off on their lien. So I have done everything from literally dumpster diving, cleaning out houses myself with my own bare hands, to I've gone to trial and sat at counsel table and assisted with the trial.
Oh, that's
so
exciting.
everything from A to Z.
That's
yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Now, you did mention something I just want to touch on.
Yeah.
And that was the Medicaid lien.
Yes.
So, for the folks at home, when you pass away and somebody opens up a probate in your name, you have to notify the Division of Medical Assistance. And if you received basically any care after the age of 55, paid for by the state of Massachusetts, they're going to want to recoup those monies from your estate. That could include putting a lien on the estate, could be putting a lien onto real estate that's owned by the estate. So just something to keep in mind, just a little tip for the folks at home. If you ever have a question on that, again, my email address will be at the bottom of the screen. You can either ask me, and if you have a question for Robin, I can get in touch with her and pass along your question. But that's why it's important to get an attorney, is that there's all these little things that, like, we can't touch upon in, a 20-minute conversation that, you might not even think of, because you go to a rehab and you're in between jobs and you don't have insurance and you're 60 and you're there for 2 weeks and it was paid for by the federal government. Like,
Yeah.
you might have completely forgotten about it. Your kids might have completely forgotten about it, but like Uncle Sam in the state of Massachusetts, they don't forget. So
Right.
Always keep that in mind. Now, Robin, you're also involved with the paralegal.
Can I also touch on a little?
Of course.
Because you bring that up with
Yeah.
the Mass Health. And another thing I think of is, and of course, I didn't know before I started in this field, and I'm sure you didn't, a lot of people's preconceived conceptions about, like, how things work. So I wanted to touch on, like, a couple of instances. For example, you would take, you have a young couple, and they're married. They don't have any kids yet, and they don't have a will, and they just assume, hey, something happens to me, everything's going to go to my spouse. That is not the case. If somebody in Massachusetts dies without a will and they don't have children, their spouse is only going to get a certain percentage of their probate assets. So that instance, I've had clients that have recently had a client that had come in and her uncle passed away, and her mother and another uncle were the heir. You know, he had no will, so those are the heirs. But there was a predeceased uncle. Well, now he has children, so they're getting a portion of it too because he didn't have a will. And, you know, there's the family. Well, they were estranged and my uncle wouldn't want this. And, you know, we didn't think this was the way it would go down. Well, if you don't make a will and dictate how you want your assets to be divided, the state's going to do it for you.
I think it also lends it like to, you know, when there's relatives that are inheriting that also need probates open. But sometimes that's also why you should contact an attorney for these things. Is, although your, you know, relative that you have to put probate for might be somewhat straightforward, doesn't mean someone's inheriting property that now needs their probate open.
Right.
Sometimes I've worked with Robin on this extensively.
I've had
where
this
it's
several times.
You just start rolling down a hill,
Yeah.
and it's just you're constantly opening up probates or like ancillary probates or probates at another states.
Right.
And it kind of becomes quickly much more complicated.
I'm actually doing that. You know, I did one before, but I'm doing one right now to clear title to another real estate in South Boston, where somebody died in the 90s. You know, she left 5 children. They never dealt with the house. They never did anything. Now they want to sell it. Well, 3 of the children have since died. So they survived her. We now have to open up their probate. So to clear title, sometimes you don't deal, so you have to deal with it as soon as somebody passes away. Get everything in order before an heir passes away, and then you're finding you have to open their probate.
And it gets, folks, you definitely don't want to mess with this because, well, like, trained professionals are struggling with this and getting this accomplished in a timely fashion. Like, I think Robin's example, or just a, you know, a hypothetical here, if a real estate is involved, the taxes still have to be paid.
Right.
Like, the insurance still needs to be paid. If there's a mortgage, like, you're going to go into default on that. Like, you need to make sure you're paying the bills on that house. And that's just the bills of the house. Like, the lawn probably should still be mowed. The driveway cleared of ice. Like if it's in a city in Boston, like you're sometimes those, you know, even here in Newburyport on High Street, if you own a house on High Street, you're responsible for the sidewalk. So if something happens to you, your family's gonna have to take care of that, and they have to, you know, shovel the sidewalk. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, and another very big deal, you and I had, when you worked with me, we came across this, and I recently came across it again, is you have a couple, and they never got married, but they have biological children together. They're minors. They don't have a will. One of them passes away. They're not married now. Maybe they're not even together anymore. One of them passes away. Well, those kids are the heirs of that person that passed away. Not only are they the heirs at law, they are the only ones that can petition the probate court. And because they're minors, they can't do that.
Yeah.
So the living biological parent thinks, hey, I can do it on their behalf. You cannot. You have to go for legal guardianship, conservatorship. You need to take care of these things during your life because it gets complicated. Yeah.
And although it is, you know, hiring a lawyer for some of these things can sometimes be cost prohibitive, especially if somebody doesn't have, you know, in a state, someone passed away, they don't have a lot. But there are attorneys that will do work on pro bono. It's never a bad thing to ask that. A lot of probate courts have like
the lawyers for the day.
Which is a great resource. And I would also, if you're really in a bind, and I know I'm friends with a few people who are probation court officers, or not probation court, I don't know why I said that, probate court officers, or there's people who work in the probate court, and they might be able to help you a little bit. Like we said earlier, you don't necessarily have to be a lawyer to fill these out. And when we say fill these out, we just mean the probate forms. So it is possible, but definitely there's ways for assistance, and so don't ever feel like you're lost. If you do feel lost, again, my email is at the bottom of the screen. Again, either myself or I can get you in touch with Robin, and you know, help is out there, so please don't fret. Now, anything else you want to talk about in regards to the probate process?
No, I just wanted to touch on those few things because people, you know, they think, oh, it's going to go this way, and when they see how it actually goes, they're shocked. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially like attorneys charge per the hour on that. You're a paralegal. You have an hourly rate, I imagine,
Right.
as well, right?
Right,
So,
right.
like, obviously, the more complicated it is, the more
Right.
expensive it can be.
Right.
And that and those fees are paid for out of the estate.
Correct.
So
Correct.
a lot of times people feel like they, sometimes they have to put money up front, but
Right,
typically
correct.
that's an expense, and they would all, whoever
Correct.
is the personal representative or the executor would normally be able to get reimbursed, assuming that there is money to reimburse them.
Yes, and like we talked about, we touched on that Mass Health lien. That comes after all costs of the estate administration. So you would be able to probate the estate. And there's also a little known, I say little known because really not all attorneys know this. If you have a surviving spouse or you don't have a surviving spouse but you have surviving children, they're entitled to a statutory amount before Mass Health gets paid as well. So again, these are all the things you want to consult an attorney on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, Robin, you're also on the board for the Paralegal Association?
Yep, I'm on the board for the Mass Paralegal Association. So I started that. I actually started out maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I was a member, and they were looking for section chairs, and they needed a trust and estate section chair. So I took that position, and what that was is finding people, just like you here with the show, to do CLEs, continuing legal education, touch on topics, whatever they want to talk about, usually on Zoom, to the members of the Mass Paralegal Association, which is working paralegals, students in the paralegal programs. So I did that for 2 years, and then they asked me to join the board and be CLE director. So now I direct and facilitate all the CLEs.
Now, is that a paid-for position, or is
No,
it volunteer?
that's volunteer position.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's very altruistic of you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, well, it is. Now, is that something you would enjoy being part of the board?
I do, because we also have a lot of, and I just actually went and talked to students at the North Shore Community College program, try to get some student members there, because if you're paralegal out there, it's a $50 membership a year, and what you get for it is amazing. I mean, you get all the CLEs we offer for free, and it's various attorneys, Boston firms, North Shore firms, everywhere, talking about all different kind of topics. So you get all those for free.
And CLEs is continuing education?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So we have someone like this month talking about conservatorships, divorce as it pertains to estate administration. We have real estate people talk, every aspect of the law. And we do networking events. Like we have an annual event. It was at the View this year. So, yeah, it's a great opportunity to network.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, I guess, so besides the continuing education
Yep.
aspect of it and the networking aspect, does that board do anything, or does the association do anything else? Like, is there any sort of, are there, like, enforcing any sort of guidelines or standards or anything like that?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Well, paralegals, I mean, in other states it's different, but just like Massachusetts attorneys, you don't need to have that so many hours a year.
Yeah.
You know, it's not required. So, same with paralegals.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you work now with the North Shore Community College?
I do. I'm on the advisory committee for the paralegal program there, and I just was asked to join that a couple of months ago, so I said yeah to that. And like I said, I went there 2 weeks ago to talk to an introductory paralegal class of about 15 to 20 students. That was interesting.
Now, do paralegals need a college degree?
They don't. It's better to have a certificate, or at least a paralegal certificate or a degree, but it's not required, no.
What would
You'd be more marketable, of course.
if there was someone out there that wanted to, get into the paralegal business,
Yeah.
like where's a good place for them to start?
Definitely get in a law firm, ground up. Like I said, even, I did it as a file clerk and then a secretary and then, a paralegal, and this is what I said to the students, take the initiative to go above and beyond. Don't just go in there 9 to 5, do your job. Take the initiative to do more. That's
Yeah, and they can. You mentioned certificate programs.
Yep.
I know they get an associate's degree. And is there an associate's degree program in paralegal?
there are. So that's
Okay.
what they have at North Shore Community College. I did a certificate program at BU.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you encourage them to get that certificate program or an associate's degree in? It's what is it in? It's not in paralegaling.
It's in paralegal studies.
Paralegal
yeah.
studies, okay.
Yep. The program I did was shorter, but it was more intensive. It was very intense.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like business law, trust and estates, litigation. Gave you a little bit of piece of each, but like
Mm-hmm.
even when you go to law school, it doesn't teach you you learn
Yeah.
on the job what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing's better than experience.
Exactly.
So
That's always going to
trumps
be the
everything
case.
else,
That's
yeah.
why I say get yourself in the door somewhere. Ask what you can do. Always be helpful. Like try to go the extra step. That's how you're going to learn.
That's
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there anything that someone looking to get into this business should avoid doing? Like something that would be a waste of time?
To me, not that it's a waste of time. Everything's a learning experience.
Gotcha.
I feel like
Oh,
good or
that's
bad,
good.
right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Now,
What I will say to paralegals getting into, don't feel like, and this is what I told the students, you don't feel like, hey, this is I have to go to law school after this. I have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be a lawyer. There are great paralegals that do more than attorneys, that make more money than attorneys, that that you get to do just as you just can't sign your name.
yeah.
That's it. You're doing everything else. It's like I say, it's like the nurse to the doctor. You're doing all the dirty work.
I mean, I'll say every law firm I've worked at and every law firm that I've been exposed to, there has always been at least one paralegal, oftentimes more, that know more than the attorneys, and could absolutely be attorneys if they chose to go to law school.
Because you're doing the grunt
Yeah.
work, right? Yeah.
Well, not the grunt work, but it's like you need to be able to think on your feet.
Yeah.
You need to be able to be adjustable.
Yeah.
You need to be able to multitask.
Yeah.
So a lot of those, and there's a lot of just because someone went to law school and became an attorney doesn't mean they necessarily have those skills.
Right. It's who you are as a person,
Yeah,
and what you're going to
exactly.
put into it is what you're going to
Yeah.
get out of it.
I mean, and there are smart attorneys and there are not so smart attorneys.
Yeah.
Just like there are smart paralegals and
right.
not so
It's
smart.
like every other profession.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So there's like a pedestal that I feel
Be
like
good at what you do,
attorneys
no matter what
Yeah,
you
exactly.
do.
Well, just apply yourself, really,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
right.
try.
Right.
I think that's
Try.
what we're having a
Try.
big issue with is just the lack of effort I see sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what I say all the time. It's you want people in working for you who care about what they do, because it doesn't matter what your education is, right? You could have the best. If you don't care, you just don't care. That's not
Yeah.
going to be good. So you can't buy that quality of somebody that cares about what they do. You can't. That's not teachable.
No.
You care or you don't. It's not teachable.
Yeah. You can't teach somebody
Yeah.
how to be willing to stay late
Apply
every day,
yourself, right.
Yeah, try and
Yeah.
pay attention and
Yeah.
care and just also be kind and courteous
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I think also being available.
Be available.
Like
be helpful.
if someone wants if you're in a team environment and somebody needs additional help, like being able to step in and help. And this goes beyond
everywhere
this is
in
everywhere.
life,
Yeah,
right? In life.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what I got to saying earlier. Like I've done everything from literal dumpster diving to sitting at counsel table at trial. Like
Yeah.
nothing's above you, nothing's beneath you. Get in there and do what needs to be done for your team.
I also think in your role in this field of law where it is estate administration, so the probate process,
Yep.
we're also dealing with somebody who has dealt with tremendous loss.
Yes.
So there's a compassion piece to this.
Yes.
That also, you would need to have.
Yeah, and that's what I think brings, like you asked me how I get into it, and I was working in civil litigation and all that, and when I started with this, I really found my passion because I like to help people, and like you said, they're at that time where even the smallest gesture means so much to them, you know? So if you can take that little bit off their plate, to me it's nothing because I do it all day for everybody.
Yeah.
But to them it's huge. You're taking something off their plate.
And like the information is out there. People can go research how to do a probate and how to do it. But like it's such a morbid topic where
Right.
no one wants to be like, oh yeah, like let me know how to do this from when my mom passes away,
Right,
my father passes
right. It's
away.
the last thing on your mind.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
like, no one even wants to think about that
No,
stuff.
no.
And then when it happens, you know, you're in this horrible state of grief, and you're in this confusing process.
Right.
And you know, it's a government. You know, the people who work in the probate court, it's just a government job for them
Yeah,
a lot
right,
of the time.
right.
So like there are some great people and they can be super helpful, but it's like like we've been saying,
Like
could be
anything else, just like you said, you can this help out there, but you could get a clerk at the probate court
Yeah.
that's willing to sit there and say this, and another one that says we can't give you legal advice. Like
yeah,
turn around and
it's
go
my
home.
lunch break. I can't do anything.
Yeah,
Like,
so it's crapshoot.
Yeah.
yeah,
so like being compassionate, I feel like, and being kind in this
Yeah.
profession is so important.
yes,
I think that leads to sort of all your volunteer work with the, helping the students
Yeah.
and helping, paralegals in the board. Do you, is there any sort of in the board or in North Shore, is there any sort of program that would take a paralegal and sort of vault them into like a lawyer's position or going to law school?
Not particularly like that, but I know like the North Shore, the program, the students, and if any law firms out there, the students there need to find internships. So if there's any law firms that are interested in interns, hit
Yeah.
me up because I can fill your role.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
So I was a student at North Shore Community College.
yeah,
And I, eventually went to law school, passed the bar.
Yep.
And I had an internship with, I was actually with the probation department in the Newburyport District Courthouse, and it was great. I learned a ton. I would just sit and watch the arraignments in the morning. At that time, I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. So
You want to hear about my internship?
Sure, I'd love to.
I might have told you this before. So, my internship, I worked for the Secretary of Education back in 1992, and I worked for Governor William Weld,
Oh wow.
and I worked on typing the education reform bill that produced the MCAS test.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Unpopular. That's an
Unpopular
job,
opinion,
I bet.
but yeah, somebody had to do it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. MCAST is polarizing to say the least. So.
Yeah.
Well, Robin, thank you so much for joining
Absolutely.
me today in the Common Law. Now, if anybody has a question for Robin, my email address is on the screen right now. Reach out to me. You can forward your question on to Robin without a problem. And again, I just like to remind everybody, anything you heard me say or Robin say of the probate process, or really anything in general, this is just meant to be educational somewhat and hopefully a little entertaining. None of this has constituted any legal advice, and it should not be considered legal advice or be,
It's just advice.
just not even advice. We're just talking. And somebody is choosing to listen or not listen. So just keep that, take everything we're saying with a grain of salt. And if you do have a legal question, please contact either myself or another attorney. Again, Robin, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
And,
Thanks for having me.
No, of course. Yeah, this has been fun. And we will see you next time on the next episode of The Common Law. Good night, everybody.